Pitch to Pro is the official podcast of Ozark United FC. This will be our platform to tell our story about the club and the special place that we call home, Northwest Arkansas. This is a journey. We want to bring you along for the ride. We'll share what's going on behind the curtain, help educate the community at large about soccer, our league, and give updates on the progress of the club along the way. Together, we'll explore and unpack our journey to professional soccer, the magic that is NWA, our community, and talk all things soccer from on the pitch to behind the scenes, telling the story of our club. Pitch to Pro podcast is proudly sponsored by podcastvideos.com. Podcastvideos.com is Northwest Arkansas's premier podcast recording studio. Equipped with industry-leading equipment, the recording studio and services save you time, money, and hassle. They are dedicated to helping you create, record, and publish high-quality podcasts for your audience. Be sure to check them out today at podcastvideos.com. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Pitch to Pro podcast. I'm your host, Wes Harris, Managing Director for Ozark United FC, Northwest Arkansas's professional soccer club playing in the United Soccer League. Today, I am very pleased to welcome back our amazing guest, Mr. Ryan Williams, for part two of our convo. He is the Assistant Director of Coaching at Sporting Arkansas and Assistant Head Coach at our Ozark United FC U20 Boys Academy team. And Ryan, we welcome back first and foremost.
Yeah, glad to be back.
And, you know, if you missed it, we'll give you a brief recap. But if you missed it, Ryan touched on a little bit of his background in pathway to pro, coming all the way from Hawaii, tropical paradise, and playing soccer out there and just dreaming of becoming a pro and making it all the way to the USL Championship with New Mexico United. So Ryan, thank you so much for joining us again, man. And, you know, we talked a lot last time about the playing environment and your journey as a player and the adversity you went through. And, you know, the triumphs that you got to experience as a player that few get to experience, right? But a lot of that was down to your hard work and determination and being able to come back. Talk a little bit now where I want to pick us up is your transition into kind of coaching. Did you know that, you know, you unfortunately had your playing career cut a little bit short, right? But, you know, and that, you know, to your point, you know, you kind of got dealt cards, right? That a lot of it was out of your control. And, but did you know before then that you wanted to transition to coaching after playing? Like, when did that start to become like an option that you wanted to pursue?
You know, even when I was finishing up playing, I just stopped playing by choice. And when I was finishing up playing, I didn't really want to be a coach. But you know, I'll be honest, like, it was like I think I was good at teaching. I did personal training. I was doing personal training. I worked with a lot of teams, you know, on the side. But like being a coach, I didn't really know if that was like something I wanted to do. But again, like even in college, like I was training players, I was training teammates. You know, like I was really on the teaching side of things. And in college too, I was almost like I was actually running some passing activities in college. So in a way I was coaching, but did I want to do it? I didn't really know. And really when John Brown, the assistant position was offered to me, and when it was opened up, you know, I was like, okay, well, let's see what this is about. And so I pursued it, and I was at John Brown for 3 seasons. And there's parts of coaching I just really loved, you know, especially that teaching side of it. I wanted to, when I was at John Brown, bring what I knew and bring it to players who, you know, they're top athletes, you know, and see if I could boost their play, right? Because there's moments as a coach where when and these are really moments that really is the drive for me in what I do, is when the light bulb switches, when the switch turns on. I'm like, or when things click, because you're coaching, you're teaching, you're engaging, and when finally something clicks, and you see the effect of it, and everything is going, like you see it in their eyes, their body language, their facial expression, and then you see it in their play, their performance, and they gain success there. Like that is one of the coolest things. And so
It,
like for me, like when I getting into coaching, like that was really something that really I think draws me in. So
that's
yeah,
awesome. And now you're getting to do it at a bunch of different levels and age groups. And, you know, I think you hit on that. You've obviously done it at a higher level than I have, than just like 7-year-olds. But even to watch at that level, right? Even just to
yeah,
watch at that level, 4v4 scrum ball, like seeing your team by the end of the season connect 3 passes in a row, and like players
yeah.
trying to open into space is, it to your point, it was one of the most fulfilling feelings, and just like joy, like wow, like so cool.
Yeah,
um
yeah.
and it obviously translates in a much different way and manifests
Hmm.
in a much higher level, different way at the college level, like you talked about, and with the U20 boys in Ozark. But talk a little bit about the difference between what you're doing now with club and kind of the youth there. I think you have the 2010 team, if I'm not mistaken.
2012 team.
2012.
2012.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's a real critical age group. That 12, 13 year old that
yeah,
is like right on that cusp, right, of like how
yeah,
their next playing years are going to shift, right?
yeah. Uh, yeah. So um, how my role kind of looks different with the Ozark United with the 2012 boys and then what it does in the college side. Um, for me, for me it's just the teaching has to meet the age, right? So
Mhm.
that's always a challenge to whether bring it down, bring it up, like that's always a challenge. So, um, but where I'm at is I take the players that I have and I have to move them into players that or get to a certain spot, right? And that's something I like doing. I like taking players. I like having players, and let me see what I can like. Let's see where we can go with those players. And so it's with the Ozark United. I love that it's a community of it's our community of players, and I
Yeah.
get to engage our community, and see if I can help these players get to where they want to go. Because at the end of the day, like you reflect this community, right? And
Right.
it's when you um kind of tie it into the last time or the last episode, like in Hawaii, when you're seeing players going and you're seeing them doing good stuff, wow, you're like, well, if he can do it, I think I can do it, and same thing here when you see players in Northern Arkansas start going places and they're doing stuff, and it's the community gets smaller and smaller, the soccer community gets smaller and smaller, and you're like, whoa, like so and so did it. Like you have to know that because that's inspiration, right? Like that's it's motivating and it's tangible, right? Like you're seeing it and you're like, I can get there too. And so like that's what I'm doing with the 2012s and the Ozark United. Um, it obviously looks different at the different ages. The 2012 group is
Yeah.
a interesting age because, like you said, it's huge in their development in the development years.
Yeah.
It's the for what I think the engagement on the intellectual side of the game is very important, right? Because that like how they think through the game now, it kind of shapes how they're going to think through the game as they get older, and as they get older, it's really hard to kind of get out of those ways, right? It's hard to learn or your thought processes are really hard to change. But right now, it's very malleable. How did I say that right?
Yep.
you
Yep.
you can
Yep.
you can you can
Valuable.
really mold
Absolutely.
those things.
Yeah.
So you can really mold it now. And so
Yeah. We'll talk. I mean, you've been in Northwest Arkansas as a player, a college student, and then now gone off and continue to play at a high level as a pro, and then come back and been around in the area for a while now. Started a family and now in the coaching space. How is the game like? Talk about the growth of the game in the area and what you've seen in your experience, and then kind of tie that into then what you're now getting to do with the U20 boys and how that's kind of culminating.
Yeah. Um, well, I coached a player at JBU who is from this area, and he was a top player. Actually, did some really good stuff. Like set some really high records at JBU. And as I've engaged even with the youth side of it, I there's talent. There's talent here, And I think what for me is really important um is to meet talent with content, right? Like to push that. Like I think um the talents here, and as things get more tangible, and they say in the pathway, right? That helps. But like any education, you have to meet people where they are and be able to get them to where they're going. And so it's as a coach, it can be, and I wrestle with this stuff because I'm fairly new. I'm fairly new into coaching. I wrestle with, man, I want to win, I want to win, I want to win because that's how I was as a player. And every coach is that way. That competitive drive. Every parent's that way. I mean, if you're in a competitive like environment, you probably want to win, no doubt.
Yeah.
Right? Like no one plays.
Yeah.
I don't know of anyone who plays soccer or coaches soccer and says I like losing. You know,
Yep.
and so it's like you wrestle with that pride a bit, but they to win at the expense of development, like I I don't know if that's very good. It may be good feeling, but for development's sake, the player's not getting anything. And
Right.
and what's and I can only say this because I was this way as a player. You see through people, you see through stuff. Even if you're winning, you see through it, and so like it and being able to being able to like receive that content so important because that if you're being challenged and you see your learning going up and up and up, well then your hope and your dream almost seems to be a bit more realized, right? Like if I feel like I'm being pushed and I'm being taught better, and this is the same thing in school, like if you're getting content that's challenging and you're being engaged by a professor or a teacher that's really pushing you and really well, especially in the college, and I think in the college environment, if you have a professor who's really pushing you and engaging with your own, say, papers or your own work, and they're able to get you to where you want to go, well, that's very actually encouraging, right? And so, and when that happens, you're like, okay, well, I think I can actually reach something that I want to reach. But if I can't, then well, if I don't see that, that class is not a fun class. In other words, that class is a joke, right? Like you don't take that class seriously. You don't take that team seriously. You don't take that season seriously, right? So it's like I find that, and it is, especially at the higher levels too. That it's I guess important, but like maybe there's a better word than important or vital. It's vital that you get content right because the content is like it kind of matches that pathway, right? And so yeah, at the one it's like the 2012s, the U13s, U14s. Yeah, trying to shape how they see the game is very important. But once it's shaped, you got to be able to continue to push and push. So
That's awesome. Well, talk about, transition a little bit here and let's talk about your experience so far, right? Still ongoing with the U20 boys academy program with Ozark United. What did you see from the response to tryouts and the level, and then how this group that truly was representation of our community at large from all corners, and a lot of, and I'll let you talk about it, but we had players that were rivals for the majority of their playing career, now coming together and getting the best talent in the same place under the same badge and playing together and competing at really, really high levels.
Yeah. The experience, I don't really know where to start. because there's a lot to it, I think. So I guess tryouts, like tryouts was, man, the amount of like players that showed up, that was really awesome. And you're seeing all these players, and as a coaching staff, you're like, oh man, like, well, we gotta sort through these players, you know. And that was a challenge in itself. But like just all those players coming out, I think it showed something to the community, right? About this, almost this, I want to be a part of this. There's togetherness, so to speak. And while they may not think it at the time, like these players, like you were saying, coming from different clubs in this area together, and they're playing, and not only just playing together, but they succeed together, right? And that's showing what we've done in this fall season. Um, experience again. I think when I look at the players who came in at this tryouts, right, and you're evaluating players, you know, you're seeing how do you say that? You see like technique, you see their feet, right, and it's some are close, some are, you know, way higher than others. But at the end of the other side, you're judging at the other side of it. You're judging again, like your decision making, and so the decision making processes of what they're seeing in the games, what they're really trying to create in the games, was very little. You know, how they connect with players was, or connect with teammates, that they're random teammates, random kind of, they've played against each other in the area, but random teammates, and how they can make those connections and then make plays happen, um, wasn't very high, right? Their vocabulary wasn't very high, you know. And so like you think about content into what we've taken these players through, for me, vocab that's a huge thing. If you can't express yourself, if you can't express what's going on in your mind, and that's something that's a skill you constantly grow at. Especially as you get older and older, you try to grow that ability to express yourself. But if you can't express yourself on the field, well, you're limiting, right? So one of the things that we've done with the team is just vocab, and connecting that with experience, right? So experience. Can you any other questions kind of help me expand on that?
I think one of the other things too that I've heard from both you and Scott, that I know you've worked on with the U20 boys, is the concept of, talk a little bit about the concept of, you know, instead of system, habits.
Yeah.
And talk about the difference there, and why and I think you're starting to see it too in other areas of the game, at other levels with other teams, especially at the highest level. You talk about habits and then the system follows. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Sure. You know, I think I talked with Scott about this. As a player, I never thought in a system. I never thought in the system. Like I mentioned in the last episode, the game's just constantly going on in my mind. I mean, whether I'm playing FIFA, whether I'm watching the Prem, whether I'm watching highlights, like I'm watching Iniesta highlights, Xavi highlights, Isco highlights, like whoever it is as a midfielder, I'm seeing those moments that they're in the game, and I'm seeing it on the film. But those are I'm envisioning that I'm in those scenarios. I never see those scenarios as systems. I see those scenarios as like moments in a game, and this is what I'm gonna do. When Thiago Alcantara does a elastical between two players, like, and he'll do it in different moments of the field. Like for me, it's just an action. Like that's just a moment in the game, you know. Of like, so I never like. I do think there's benefits to both of them. I think there's benefits to both of them, you know. Because when I was a pro, it was very much like very systematic in that way, which is okay because that actually helped me as a pro. It helped me in certain moments as a pro. But this idea of like actions, it's like everything is linked to decision making and being able to recognize moments in the game, right? Like a 2v2 will always be a 2v2. 2v2 will always be a 2v2. A 3v3 will always be a 3v3, no matter what system you decide to play. You know, an overlap is a decision you can use to is a decision you can make. It could be an underlap. It doesn't always have to be an overlap. If it's, for me, I think, especially at the youth levels, like, and well, the really, really young levels, system can be black and white. And once it's black and white, it's predictable. And it's not about being black and white, but it's about creativity. Creativity is gray. Creativity is, I get to decide what to do. I get to create what I want to create. So for me, it's and that's what ultimately I think changes the game. Like this game is constantly changing. Like there's things that are being done in the Prem that you never see done. Like the one that comes to my mind is Orange Slot or Pochettino, the way they use the outside backs. I've seen runs by the outside backs, and like, I've never heard of that run in my life. But again, like you talk about like the creativity, like a player to be creative and to, like, a player can think that. Like these kids can think that. They can come up with those runs on their own if you allow them to come up with those runs on their own, right? And it's like, but my way of thinking, it can be very limiting, you know? And the whole thing is, I'm not playing. It's these kids are playing. These kids have to be creative. These kids have to make the decisions. These kids have to see the moments, right? And so for me, like, the actions, it's like it's a tool set. Like you have all these actions, all these things that you can do in a game. And for like a training session or for a game, it's my job to facilitate. Like, can you see the variety of tools that you can use in a given moment, right? Because it's not always one thing. One thing doesn't always work. One guy's body shape may be slightly turned. That actually several other actions you can do, right? And that high level detail, like, well, that like comes from just playing. The distance of a defender may be a yard different from the last scenario. Well, that calls for a whole different thing, right? And at the end of the day, it's we're trying to create autonomy. We're trying to create individuality, right? We're not trying to create players who, because in 5 years the game will be different. The U.S. national team will be playing different soccer. The Prem, you'll be seeing different soccer in the Prem. You know, La Liga, you'll be seeing different styles of soccer. So it's like, you're not trying to create a player who fits a time right now, but you're trying to create a player who, when their opportunity comes, if they get an opportunity, wow, a coach looks at them and say, I like what they have. I can bring them into what I'm doing, you know? So like, and for me, it's like, I think, well, that last thing, I think on the actions piece, like the actions focused opens up a player for a future opportunity, right, to fit anywhere. Instead of like a system like 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, you're going to play this type of a midfielder, you're going to make these kind of runs, you're going to be showing up in these spots. You're very limiting. Like, you're a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, you're telling a 10-year-old to be in this one spot. Well, you do that for a while, you get around their next opportunity. Say they're trying out for a college. Sorry, they can only go to a college that coach tells them to go into this one spot. It's very limiting. I think it's very limiting. You know, it's very restricting. But if I can give a player who is playing a 10 and saying, hey, like, look at all these different movements that the number 10s in Liga MX, look at what these 10s in the MLS, look at this number 10 Honey Mukhtar, like, look at what he's doing, and look at what these 10s in Liverpool are doing. Like, take it and run. Go do it. Go do your thing in the game. And you'll find this kid's going to be doing like all these different actions and like things that you didn't even think of. And they go in, I think later on, they go into a coach, their college coach, whoever it is, the next level, whatever it is, goes and sees this player and like, whoa, that's an individual right there. That's a thinker. You know what I mean? Like, that's a thinker. I can reason with a thinker. You know what I mean? And so I think that just like opportunity wise, like it's anywhere. Like if you're a thinker of this game, man, you can get coaches want thinkers. I want a thinker.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. To your point, I think it's an interesting way to put it where, you know, habits and actions are tools in your toolbox that, when presented with, soccer, to your point, in my opinion, soccer is all about situational decision making.
100%. 100%.
Like at the highest level, right? And what separates and
Yeah.
how do teams win is, it's about scoring goals, but it's situational decision making throughout the game. Because everybody can execute, everybody has a good touch, everybody, right? It's here, and it's situational decision making and the chess match that is the 90 minutes. And so your concept of focusing on, obviously you got to talk about system, but you focus more on building actions and habits that allow a player's toolbox to go here, that fills this with, very quick in the game, in the moment. How do I attack? How do I manipulate? How do I do those things based upon those habits and actions that have been drilled into me over and over and over and over, no matter what the system is or the situation is within the game. And that's such an interesting, different, dynamic to start to play around with, think about. And that builds on, you talked about vocab with the U20s. Like, some of that is vocab about actions and habits, right? And what does this mean if I call this out to a player on my team, right? And how do we communicate and talk through that? So really, really interesting stuff, man. Well, I'll end with this. What are you, and you touched a little bit about this as a player when you were at New Mexico United, what are you most excited for with professional men's and women's soccer coming to Northwest Arkansas?
Well, for me, I have a son and a daughter. My daughter was just born, and so it's like, for me, it's like both games. To take my family to these games that are around this community, like, man, I think that's so awesome. I saw it in New Mexico United. I saw it with New Mexico United. To be like, I don't have to go to KC for a game. Like, I can go and be part of my community here. Pathway is one thing, it's great, but I think for me, it's like, I get to do something. I get to go watch high level games right in Northwest Arkansas. I find that I get to bring my family. I get the experience with my family what I got the experience as a player with New Mexico United. I get to take that. I get to take them to a game and watch our team. It's our team. Watch our community's team. I can support this team. I love like the I love like towns, like in England, it's like towns. They have their team. I love that. It's like, for me, it's like Northwest Arkansas. That's our team. It's our town. Like, region, town. It's our town's team. You know what I mean? So I think for me, like, that's the piece where I look forward to the most. Like, it gets to be our team.
That's cool. Well, Ryan, thank you so much, man. It's been another insightful and just really fun convo, and appreciate everything that you're doing with our youth in the area. And again, instilling that passion for the beautiful game onto the next generation. Appreciate everything you're doing with our U20 Boys Academy, and can't wait to continue to see the success there with those boys. And just all the best to you. And really appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, Wes, thank you for this. This was good.
Thank you for catching this episode of Pitch to Pro. Remember to follow us on all socials at Pitch to Pro, and visit pitchtopro.com or YouTube and Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, for more great content. Until next time, Northwest Arkansas, cheers. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Pitch to Pro podcast. Be sure to tune in again in 2 weeks for the next installment, and check out the Stoppage Time series for a recap of today's episode. Be sure to find us at Pitch to Pro on YouTube, Instagram, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Until next time, Northwest Arkansas, cheers.